2 years ago, I learned that success without an audience is still success. But an audience without understanding is just noise. The smell of Mom's pot roast filled the dining room that October evening, the same recipe she'd been making for Sunday dinners since I was 12. The mahogany table Dad had built himself gleamed under the chandelier, set with Mom's good china, the kind she only brought out for celebrations. And tonight was definitely a celebration, at least for one of us. Garrett strutted through the front door like he owned the place, which, given Dad's reaction, he might as well have. The sound of his dress shoes clicked against the hardwood with the confidence of someone who'd just closed another life-changing deal. His BMW, the latest model, pearl white with chrome accents, sat in our driveway like a monument to his success. I'd parked my 5-year-old Honda Civic on the street, as usual. "There's my champion!" Dad's voice boomed from the kitchen as Garrett made his entrance. The enthusiasm in his tone was unmistakable, the same tone he'd used when Garrett made varsity football, when he graduated college, when he landed his first sales job. It was the tone reserved for achievements that mattered. Garrett grinned, adjusting his Rolex, a new addition since the last family dinner. "Just another day at the office, Pops. Though I guess not everyone can say their day at the office nets them a $40,000 commission check." I was already seated at the table, still wearing my work clothes, a modest gray suit from Men's Warehouse. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed success. I'd come straight from the bank, where I'd spent the afternoon reviewing commercial loan applications, analyzing financial statements, and making decisions that affected people's livelihoods. But that didn't make for dinner table conversation, apparently. Mom emerged from the kitchen carrying the roast, her face beaming with the kind of pride that only comes from having both her boys home. "Felix, honey, you look tired. Long day?" "Every day's long when you're building something real," I replied, though the irony would be lost on everyone except me. Dad appeared behind Mom, carrying a bottle of champagne, the expensive stuff he kept hidden in the basement for special occasions. "Tonight calls for the good stuff," he announced, already working on the cork. "My son just closed the biggest deal of his career. Tell them, Garrett." Garrett leaned back in his chair with the casual arrogance of someone accustomed to being the center of attention. "Client walked into the showroom yesterday looking at entry-level models, left with a fully loaded luxury package, financing, extended warranty, the works. Sometimes you just have to know how to read people, how to make them see what they really need." The cork popped, and Dad poured champagne into 3 glasses, leaving mine noticeably empty. Not an oversight, a statement. Champagne was for achievements worth celebrating. "That's what real success looks like," Dad said, raising his glass toward Garrett. "Knowing how to close, knowing how to make things happen. That's the difference between dreamers and doers." I cut into my pot roast, the meat tender and perfectly seasoned, while the conversation flowed around me like water around a stone. They talked about Garrett's client list, his sales numbers, his plans for the next quarter. Dad hung on every word, asking follow-up questions, offering advice from his own business experience. The small construction company he'd built from nothing had made him comfortable, not wealthy, but successful enough to recognize ambition when he saw it. Or thought he saw it. "And what about you, Felix?" Dad's attention finally turned my way, though his tone had shifted. Less enthusiasm, more obligation. "The way you ask about the weather when you're making small talk." "Still at the bank, I assume?" "Still there," I confirmed, taking another bite. "Good, good. Stable job, regular hours. Nothing wrong with that." The words carried the weight of someone trying to find something positive to say about a disappointing report card. "Though I have to ask, when are you planning to move up? You've been there, what, 3 years now?" "Something like that." Garrett leaned forward, his voice carrying the condescending tone of an older brother who'd always been the favorite. "Felix, man, you've got to think bigger. Banking is fine, but you're never going to make real money shuffling papers behind a desk. You need to get out there, work with people, close deals. I could probably get you an interview at my place. They're always looking for new blood in sales." The offer hung in the air like smoke, well-intentioned but insulting. I set down my fork and met his gaze. "I appreciate the thought, but I'm good where I am." "Are you, though?" Dad interjected, and something in his voice made the room feel smaller. "Felix, I'm going to be honest with you because that's what fathers do. Your brother just made more money in one afternoon than you probably make in 6 months. He's building relationships, creating opportunities, making things happen. And you? He paused, searching for words that wouldn't sound too harsh. You're wearing a tie and calling it success. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's fork clinked against her plate as she tried to pretend she hadn't heard. Garrett looked uncomfortable for the first time all evening, probably realizing his bragging had set the stage for this moment. Dad continued, his voice gaining confidence as he warmed to his theme. Your brother earns real money. You're just playing office. Wearing a tie doesn't make you successful, son. When are you going to do something real? The words hit like a physical blow, not because they were cruel, though they were, but because they revealed something I'd suspected for years. In Dad's eyes, I'd already been measured and found wanting. The quiet competence I'd built my career on, the steady progress I'd made, the expertise I'd developed. None of it registered as real achievement because it didn't come with flash and fanfare. I looked around the table at the faces of my family. Mom's expression was pained, caught between loyalty to her husband and protection of her son. Garrett looked genuinely sorry, probably wishing he'd toned down his celebration. And Dad? Dad looked like a man delivering tough love to a son who needed to hear hard truths. The thing is, I could have corrected him right then. Could have explained that my entry-level position had evolved considerably over the past year. Could have mentioned the promotion I'd received, the raise that had pushed my salary well into 6 figures, the respect I'd earned from colleagues and superiors alike. Could have pointed out that my savings account was growing while Garrett's lifestyle required every penny he made, and then some. But what would have been the point? Dad had made his judgment based on appearances, on the surface-level markers of success he understood. Correcting him wouldn't change his perspective. It would just force him to adjust his dismissal to fit new facts. Better to let him think what he wanted to think. I folded my napkin and placed it beside my plate. I should go. Early morning tomorrow. Felix, wait, Mom started, but I was already standing. Dinner was great, Mom. Thanks for cooking. I kissed her forehead, nodded to Garrett, and looked at Dad one last time. Congratulations on raising a son who earns real money. The drive home gave me time to think, the familiar streets of my childhood neighborhood passing by in the darkness. Dad wasn't wrong about Garrett's success. He was genuinely talented at sales, had a natural charisma that opened doors and closed deals. But Dad wasn't right about my failure either. He just couldn't see past the quiet nature of what I did to understand its value. That night, I made a decision that would define the next 2 years of my life. I wouldn't argue with Dad's assessment. I wouldn't defend my career or explain my achievements. I would simply continue building the kind of success that didn't need an audience, the kind that spoke for itself when the time came. I had no idea that time would come in the form of my brother's loan application landing on my desk, or that the phone call that followed would change everything between us forever. But that's a story for another day. For now, I was content to be underestimated. Success without recognition is still success. And sometimes, the sweetest victories are the ones nobody sees coming. The manila folder landed on my desk with the same soft thud as dozens of others that morning. Thursday at Great Lakes Financial meant loan review day. My favorite day of the week, actually. There's something satisfying about analyzing numbers, seeing patterns in financial behavior, understanding the real story behind someone's credit report. Numbers don't lie the way people do. I was halfway through my second cup of coffee when Sarah, my assistant, knocked on my doorframe. Felix, this one needs manager approval. She held up a thick application packet. 200,000 personal loan. Credit's borderline. Debt to income is concerning. Thanks, just said it with the others. I didn't look up from the commercial real estate loan I was reviewing. A restaurant expansion in Naperville. Solid business plan, reasonable projections, owners with skin in the game. Easy approval. Sarah placed the file on my desk and paused. Actually, this one's a little unusual. The applicant has the same last name as you, Novak. My pen stopped moving across the page. In 2 years at Great Lakes Financial, I'd never seen another Novak cross my desk. It's not exactly Smith or Johnson, but it's not rare enough to guarantee relation either. Still, something made my stomach tighten. I reached for the file. Thanks, Sarah. I'll take a look. The moment I opened it, I saw the name typed in neat official font. Garrett Michael Novak. My brother's full name, his date of birth, his address. That expensive Lincoln Park condo I'd only seen in his Instagram posts. I leaned back in my leather chair, the kind of chair that screams management in ways my old cubicle never did. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, sitting in an office with my name on the door and my title on business cards, reviewing my brother's loan application. The same brother who'd smirked 2 years ago when Dad called me a glorified paper pusher. The application was thick. Garrett had been thorough. I'd give him that. Employment verification from Premier Luxury Auto Sales, where he'd been for 3 years. Tax returns showing variable income. Great years and terrible years. The hallmark of commission-based sales. Bank statements from Chase, credit reports from all 3 bureaus, asset declarations. I started with the credit report. Score 640. Not terrible, but not good. 2 years ago, Garrett's credit had been in the mid-700s. I remembered him bragging about it at some family gathering. 70 points is a significant drop, the kind that tells a story of missed payments and maxed out cards. The bank statements painted a clearer picture. Garrett's checking account looked like a roller coaster. Massive deposits followed by immediate withdrawals. A $15,000 commission check would hit on the 1st of the month, and by the 10th, the account would be overdrawn. The pattern repeated month after month. Money in, money out, never any accumulation. His savings account held 347. I pulled out my calculator and started working through his debt-to-income ratio. Credit cards. 4 different accounts, all carrying balances. Total credit card debt, $78,432. Car payment on the BMW, on $247 monthly. Mortgage on the condo, $3,200 monthly. Insurance, utilities, minimum payments, it all added up to a monthly obligation of $7,800. His average monthly income, based on the last 2 years, $9,200. That left him $1,400 for food, gas, entertainment, and any unexpected expenses. No wonder he was drowning. But the real red flag was in the employment verification. I called Premier Luxury Auto Sales directly. Standard procedure for any loan over $100K. The sales manager, a guy named Rick, was helpful enough. Garrett Novak? Yeah, he's one of our guys. Been here about 3 years. How's his performance been recently? Rick paused. Well, he had a great year in 2022. Last year was tougher. This year's been challenging. The luxury car market's been weird. Some months he kills it, other months he doesn't move a single unit. What about his claimed income? He's listed $180,000 annually. Another pause. That might be optimistic. I mean, if he has a great year, sure. But realistically, he's probably looking at $120K this year, maybe less. I thanked Rick and hung up. Garrett had inflated his income by at least $60,000 on the application. Not technically fraud. Sales guys often project their best-case scenario, but definitely misleading. Then I noticed something else in the application that made my blood run cold. Under references and co-signers, Garrett had listed Thomas Novak, our father, as a co-signer and reference. Dad's signature was right there on the co-signer agreement, along with his business information and social security number. I stared at that signature for a long time. Dad's handwriting, his phone number, his business address. Garrett had somehow convinced our father to co-sign for a $200,000 loan without Dad understanding what that meant. Or maybe Dad did understand and just trusted Garrett blindly. Either way, it was a disaster waiting to happen. I picked up my phone and dialed Dad's business number, then stopped before hitting send. What would I say? Hey Dad, did you know you're on the hook for Garrett's financial mistakes? That conversation wouldn't go well for anyone. Instead, I did what I always do. I followed protocol. I ran Dad's credit report as the co-signer. It was solid, 780 score, minimal debt, steady income from his construction business. Dad could technically qualify as a co-signer, but that didn't make it a good idea. I spent the next hour going through every line item in Garrett's application. The more I dug, the worse it looked. Late mortgage payments, 3 in the last 6 months. Credit utilization at 96% across all cards. A pattern of cash advances and balance transfers that screamed desperation. This wasn't just a bad loan application. This was a financial emergency. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Haven't heard from you in a while, honey. Hope work is going well. Dad says business is good. Garrett closed another big sale last week." I stared at that text for a long time. Another big sale. If Garrett had closed anything significant recently, it wasn't showing up in his bank statements. Either Mom was mistaken, or Garrett was still performing success for the family while drowning privately. Sarah knocked again. "Felix, how's that Novak file coming?" I looked up at her, probably with a strange expression on my face. "It's complicated." "Denial?" "Yeah, clear denial. Debt to income is 78%. Credits dropped 70 points in 2 years. Employment verification doesn't match stated income." I paused. "But I need to handle this one carefully. Can you get me the standard denial letter template?" "Sure thing. Want me to draft it?" "No, I'll write this one myself." After Sarah left, I sat alone in my office, staring out the window at downtown Chicago. Somewhere out there, Garrett was probably showing luxury cars to wealthy clients, wearing his expensive suits and Swiss watch, projecting success. And somewhere else, Dad was probably telling his construction crew about his successful son, who closed another big deal. Neither of them knew that Garrett was 3 months away from losing everything. The ethical thing to do was deny the loan. It was a bad risk for the bank, and honestly, it would be bad for Garrett too. Adding $200,000 in debt to his current situation wouldn't solve anything. It would just delay the inevitable crash and make it worse when it came. But denying the loan meant my signature would be on the rejection letter. My name, my title, Felix Novak, Credit Risk Manager. The same Felix who was just playing office, according to Dad. The same Felix who wasn't earning real money like his successful older brother. I pulled out a fresh legal pad and started writing the denial letter by hand first, the way I always do with difficult decisions. The formal language felt strange when applied to family. "After careful review of your loan application dated March 15th, we regret to inform you that your request for a $200,000 personal loan cannot be approved at this time. The primary factors in this decision include debt-to-income ratio exceeding acceptable parameters, recent credit score decline, and insufficient verification of stated income. Professional, objective, completely by the book." I was still writing when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Dad Business. For a moment, I considered not answering, but that would be cowardly, and whatever else I am, I'm not a coward. "Hi, Dad. Felix, good to catch you. Listen, I wanted to ask you something about banking stuff. Garrett mentioned he might need to move some money around for a business opportunity. You know anything about personal loans? What kind of rates banks are offering these days?" My stomach dropped. Dad had no idea what he'd signed. "Dad, are you asking hypothetically or—" "Well, Garrett said he might need to borrow some money, expand his client base, maybe lease a better office space. You know, investment in his future. I told him I'd help however I could." I closed my eyes. "Dad, did Garrett ask you to sign anything recently?" "Sign what?" "Oh, you mean like a reference?" "Yeah, he said banks like to see family support for entrepreneurs." I was happy to put in a good word. "Why? What exactly did you sign?" "I don't know, some paperwork. Garrett handled it. Said it was just a character reference. Show the bank that family believes in him." "Felix, what's this about? You sound worried." I looked down at Garrett's application, at Dad's signature on the co-signer line. He truly had no idea what he'd agreed to. "Dad, I need you to be very careful about any financial documents you sign, even for family. Make sure you read everything, understand what you're agreeing to." "Of course I do. I'm not stupid, Felix. I've been running a business since before you were born." "I know, Dad. Be careful, okay?" After I hung up, I sat in my office for another 20 minutes, just thinking. Garrett had manipulated Dad into co-signing without Dad understanding the implications. That alone made me angry enough to deny the loan out of principle. But the numbers made the decision for me. This was a bad loan by every metric we used. If Garrett were a stranger, I'd deny it without a second thought. I typed up the formal denial letter, printed it on official letterhead, and signed it with my full title. Felix Novak, Credit Risk Manager, Great Lakes Financial. Then I did something that would change everything. I made sure the denial letter would be sent to both Garrett and Dad, as required by law for co-signed applications. Dad would get his own copy, with my signature clearly visible. I stared at the loan application on my desk for a full minute before opening it. Garrett Novak. My brother's name in black ink on official bank letterhead felt surreal, like seeing a ghost materialize in my sterile office. The application was thick. Too thick for a straightforward personal loan. I flipped through the pages, my trained eye catching details that made my stomach sink. Requested amount, $200,000. Purpose, business expansion and debt consolidation. The second part told me everything I needed to know. My assistant knocked and peered in. Felix, the Novak application. It's flagged for immediate review. The automated system kicked it back because of the debt-to-income ratio. I see it. Thanks, Michelle. I kept my voice steady, professional. She didn't need to know this was my brother bleeding financial red ink across my desk. I opened Garrett's credit report first. The numbers hit me like a physical blow. Credit score, 640. 2 years ago, when Dad was toasting his success, Garrett probably had a score in the mid-700s. Now he was barely above subprime territory. Late payments scattered across the report like bullet holes. Credit cards maxed at $78,000 total. And the inquiries, God, the inquiries. 12 hard pulls in 6 months. Desperation had a credit report signature, and this was it. His employment verification came back inconsistent. Garrett claimed $180,000 annual income, but his tax returns told a different story. Last year, $156,000. The year before, $134,000. This year, based on his year-to-date pay stubs, he was tracking toward maybe $120,000. Commission-based income was volatile, but this wasn't volatility. This was decline. I pulled up his bank statements. The spending pattern made me physically nauseous. BMW lease, $850 monthly. Condo mortgage, $3,200. Credit card minimum payments, $2,400. Insurance, utilities, food, entertainment. The math was brutal and simple. In good months, Garrett barely broke even. In bad months, he borrowed to survive. But the real kicker was at the bottom of the application. Emergency contact and cosigner, Thomas Novak. My father's name, address, and phone number in Garrett's handwriting. I grabbed my phone and called our family home. Dad, it's Felix. Felix, good to hear from you, son. How's work? Still playing office, I thought, but didn't say. Dad, did Garrett talk to you about co-signing anything recently? Co-signing? No, why? I closed my eyes. Garrett had forged Dad's consent. Not legally forged, Dad's signature wasn't on anything yet. But he'd listed him as willing co-signer without permission. In the banking world, this was a massive red flag for character. Just checking on something. I'll call you later. I hung up and stared at the application again. By every metric we used, this was a clear denial. Debt-to-income ratio, 78%. Anything over 40% required special approval. Credit score declining. Income unstable. Unauthorized cosigner reference. If this came from a stranger, I'd reject it without hesitation. But this wasn't a stranger. This was my brother, the golden child. The one Dad celebrated while dismissing my office playing. My phone buzzed. Text from Garrett. Hey bro, applied for a loan at your bank. Didn't know you worked there until I saw the address. Small world. Should be approved soon. Great credit, great income. Might put in a good word for you with the managers. The casual arrogance of it hit me like a slap. He still thought I was a teller. Still thought he was doing me a favor by acknowledging my existence. Still had no idea I was the manager who would decide his financial fate. I walked to the window overlooking downtown Milwaukee. 15 floors below, people hurried along the sidewalks, each carrying their own financial stories. Dreams, debts, hopes, desperation. From up here, they all looked the same size. My reflection stared back from the glass. conservative navy suit, understated tie, hair slightly graying at 27 from stress and long hours. I looked like what I was, a serious professional who'd built something real. Not flashy, not Instagram-worthy, but solid, dependable, successful in ways that mattered beyond appearances. Behind me, my office told the same story. MBA diploma on the wall from Northwestern. Banking certifications. Awards for loan portfolio performance. Photos from company retreats with my team. A life built on competence, not charisma. I returned to my desk and opened Garrett's file one more time. The brother I'd grown up with was drowning in debt, and he didn't even know it. The BMW, the designer clothes, the expensive dinners, all of it funded by credit cards and desperation. He was performing wealth while hemorrhaging money. The irony was crushing. Dad had spent 2 years bragging about Garrett's success to anyone who'd listen. My son the salesman, 6-figure deals, living the American dream. Meanwhile, Garrett was living the American nightmare. High income, higher expenses, zero net worth. I thought about that dinner 2 years ago. Dad's dismissive laugh when he called my work playing office. Garrett's smug grin when he talked about knowing how to close deals. Mom's uncomfortable silence. My quiet exit without defending myself. I'd made a choice that night. Instead of arguing, instead of explaining what I really did, I decided to let my actions speak. I'd focused on building something real while they celebrated something hollow. Now, reality was catching up. Garrett's house of cards was collapsing, and somehow, impossibly, I was the one holding the match. My computer chimed with an email from our senior loan committee. High-value denials required additional oversight. I'd need to document my reasoning thoroughly and get sign-off from the department head. Standard procedure, but in this case, it meant my decision would be reviewed by people who knew me professionally. I started typing my analysis. Application presents multiple risk factors inconsistent with institution lending standards. Debt-to-income ratio exceeds acceptable thresholds. Credit profile shows deteriorating payment history. Income documentation reveals declining earnings trend. Unauthorized cosigner reference raises character concerns. Recommendation: deny. Professional, objective, accurate. Everything a loan denial should be. But as I typed, I kept hearing Dad's voice from that dinner. Your brother earns real money. You're just playing office. I saved the document and leaned back in my chair. In 20 minutes, I'd sign this denial and send it through the system. Garrett would get a rejection letter. Dad, as the listed cosigner, would get a copy. And they'd both learn that the son who was just playing office had the power to make decisions that would reshape their understanding of success. The phone on my desk rang. Michelle's voice came through the intercom. Felix, your 3 p.m. appointment is here. Send them in. I closed Garrett's file and prepared for my next meeting. Just another day at the office. Just another loan decision. Just another moment when quiet competence would speak louder than any argument I could have made at that dinner table 2 years ago. Outside my window, Milwaukee hummed with afternoon energy. Somewhere in the city, Garrett was probably celebrating a sale, posting about his success on social media, completely unaware that his financial world was about to crumble. And somewhere else, Dad was probably telling someone about his successful salesman's son and his other boy who just works at a bank. By tomorrow, everything would be different. 6 months had passed since that conversation in the coffee shop with Dad. 6 months of radio silence, awkward family gatherings where everyone tiptoed around the elephant in the room, and Garrett slowly, painfully rebuilding his life from the ground up. I'd watched from a distance as he sold the condo, traded the BMW for a used Toyota Camry, and moved into a modest apartment on the south side. The flashy Instagram posts had stopped. The designer clothes disappeared. For the first time in years, my brother looked tired, but also, strangely, more real. I was reviewing quarterly reports in my office when my assistant knocked on the door. Felix, there's a call for you on line 2. Says it's personal. Personal calls at work were rare for me. I kept my professional and family lives carefully separated, especially after everything that had happened. Did they give a name? Garrett Novak said he's your brother. My pen stopped moving across the page. Garrett hadn't called me once since the loan denial. Not once. Whatever this was about, it had to be significant. Put him through. The phone rang once before I heard his voice. Felix? Thanks for taking the call. I know you're probably busy with, important banking stuff. There was no sarcasm in his voice, which surprised me. The old Garrett would have made that comment drip with condescension. What's going on, Garrett? A long pause. I could hear traffic in the background, the distant hum of city life. I'm sitting in my car outside Dad's office. I need to tell you something. About what happened after that phone call. The one where Dad found out about your job. I leaned back in my chair. Through my office window, I could see the Chicago skyline, gray and imposing under the November clouds. I'm listening. He didn't talk to me for 3 weeks after that. 3 weeks, Felix? Not a word. Mom had to play messenger between us. And when he finally called me, you know what he said? He said, I raised 2 sons. One of them I understood, and one of them I completely missed. The words hung in the air between us. I found myself gripping the phone tighter than necessary. Garrett continued, his voice quieter now. He told me he spent 2 years bragging to his contractor friends about my sales numbers. 2 years telling everyone how proud he was of his successful son, while his other son was apparently just playing office. And then he had to call those same guys back and tell them he'd been wrong, that you weren't playing anything, that you were actually running the show. I stared at my computer screen, watching the cursor blink in the quarterly report I'd been writing. The numbers blurred slightly. Why are you telling me this? Because I think you deserve to know that he's been carrying this around like a weight. And because... Another pause, longer this time. Because I've been carrying something around too. That night, at the celebration dinner 2 years ago, when Dad said that thing about you just playing office, I didn't stop him. I could have. I should have. But I didn't, because it felt good to be the successful one for once. And I've been thinking about that every day since my world fell apart. The honesty in his voice caught me off guard. This wasn't the Garrett I'd grown up with, the one who'd learned to perform confidence so well that I sometimes wondered if he believed his own act. Garrett, let me finish, please. His voice cracked slightly. I drove past your place last week. That townhouse you bought? It's nice, Felix. Really nice. Not flashy, not trying to impress anyone, just solid. Like everything else you do. And I realized I've never even asked you about your life. Your actual life. I don't know if you're dating anyone, I don't know what you do for fun, I don't know what your dreams are beyond work. I've been so busy trying to outshine you that I never actually tried to know you. I closed my eyes, feeling something I hadn't expected. Sadness. Not anger, not vindication. Just a deep, aching sadness for all the years we'd lost to competition and comparison. There's something else, Garrett continued. I'm getting married. That opened my eyes. What? Her name is Lisa. She's a teacher. Makes $43,000 a year and drives a Honda Fit with a dent in the passenger door. She's the most real person I've ever met, and she doesn't care about any of the stuff I used to think mattered. We've been together for 4 months, since right after I sold the condo. And Felix? She asked me about you last week. She said, tell me about your brother. The real stuff, not the family drama stuff. What's he actually like? And I realized I couldn't answer her. I found myself smiling, despite everything. A teacher named Lisa who drives a dented Honda Fit. She sounds perfect for you. She is, and she wants to meet you. Both of you, actually. You and Dad. She says families are complicated, but they're still families. She thinks we can figure this out if we actually try. Through my office window, I watched a construction crew working on the building across the street. They moved with practiced efficiency, each person knowing their role, trusting the others to do theirs. It reminded me of something Dad used to say about his own construction crews. Everyone's got a job to do. The foundation guy isn't better than the electrician. They're just different jobs, and you need them all. Felix, you still there? Yeah, I'm here, just thinking. I turned away from the window. Garrett, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Are you calling me because Lisa thinks you should? Or because you actually want to rebuild this? Another long pause. When he spoke again, his voice was steady. Both. Lisa made me realize I wanted to, but I didn't know how. And I was scared you'd tell me it was too late. Is it? Too late? The question sat between us like a challenge. I thought about all the family dinners where I'd been overlooked, all the achievements that went unnoticed, all the times I'd bitten my tongue when Dad praised Garrett's latest commission while dismissing my steady progress as playing office. I thought about the loan application, about the professional distance I'd maintained, about the choice I'd made to let my work speak for itself rather than defending my worth to people who'd already decided I had none. But I also thought about Garrett sitting in his used Toyota, calling me from outside Dad's office, admitting to mistakes I'd never expected him to acknowledge. I thought about him finding someone who loved him for who he was, rather than what he appeared to be. I thought about the fact that he was asking, genuinely asking, whether we could try again. No, I said finally. It's not too late. But it can't go back to the way it was. I'm not going to spend the next 20 years trying to prove myself to you or Dad or anyone else. I know who I am and what I've built. If you want to know me, really know me, then you're going to have to accept that I don't need your approval anymore. I'd like your respect, and I'd love your friendship, but I don't need your validation. I understand. And Felix? For what it's worth, you've had my respect for months now. I just didn't know how to say it. I felt something loosen in my chest, a tension I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. So tell me about Lisa, the real stuff. What's she like? For the next 20 minutes, Garrett told me about the woman who'd helped him see the difference between success and happiness, between performing and being. He told me about their plans for a small wedding, about her students who sent her handmade cards, about how she'd laughed when he tried to impress her with his sales stories and said, "That's nice, but what do you actually care about?" When he finished, I found myself genuinely happy for him. She sounds like exactly what you needed. She is. And Felix? She wants to have dinner with you next week. Both of us do. No family drama, no history, just getting to know each other. Would you be up for that? I looked at my calendar, already mentally rearranging meetings. Yeah, I'd like that. After we hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, watching the construction crew across the street pack up their tools as the day ended. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hi, Felix. This is Lisa, Garrett's fiancée. He gave me your number. Hope that's okay. Looking forward to meeting you next week. P.S. He's been practicing how to ask you to be his best man. Fair warning." I stared at the message, feeling something I hadn't experienced in years when it came to my family. Hope. Not the desperate hope of someone still seeking approval, but the quiet hope of someone ready to build something new on a foundation of mutual respect rather than old resentments. The construction crew had finished their work across the street. Tomorrow, they'd return and continue building, one steady day at a time. It seemed like a pretty good metaphor for what Garrett and I were about to attempt. My phone rang again. This time, it was Dad.